Hi everybody, and welcome to our 5th Lunch and Learn this year. And we just wanted to say hello to everybody. And if you want to say hello, to each other, you can quickly take yourself off mute and say hi.
Hello.
Hi.
There you go.
Hello all.
Yeah,
Good afternoon. Hello.
How are you, Damien?
Excellent. Thank you very much. So today we'll be learning about leveraging technology to increase employee performance, which we all need to hear about, that's for sure. Today is hosted by BDC Performance, and we've got the CEO, John Cooksey, here, and ER Strategies. So, and then we have the Group CEO, Damien Gooden, here as well. So I think I'm just going to say over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Let's start things off.
Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everybody, unless, of course, you're in Western Australia, and it's good morning to you. What we're going to do today is take you through a couple of things, and we're not necessarily going to sell you a technology or tell you the best technology to grab for your business, but as much talk to you about how to ensure that you're ready to leverage technology in order to increase employee performance and make sure you get a great return on investment from your HR spend. So we're going to cover a couple of things. We're going to go through a bit of background on HR and help separate operational from strategic HR initiatives, provide a simple path, if you like, for HR through an organisation, because it's often not the easiest thing to understand how HR fits, and we talk a lot more about sales and marketing. Highlight a 3-step process for people capital planning, which may or may not be something that you do already, and then touch on an audit process to make sure you're getting the right return on investment from your spend as well. And it's not just for, I guess, your organisation and your employees, but I think this is particularly pertinent, and I've experienced this in the past as a director with KFC and Pizza Hut, looking after HR and operations here and overseas, is in reality, this approach should really translate down into your franchisees as well. And I'll touch more on that later. My biggest challenge is franchisors planning new products to market, for example, and knowing that their franchisees don't have the staff to sell the product, but sometimes don't necessarily do anything about that. So just for some context, when we all started working a long time ago, some of us started working a lot longer ago than others. For example, you can see Damien's, got less experience, but probably better EQ than I have. Working was a pretty consistent work environment. We worked on farms, in factories. Life was pretty easy, at least predictable. But since the advent of technology, other business models and so on, one of which is franchising, then the way we run businesses has become far more complex. So at any, I guess, point in time, an HR strategy it dictates that certain things are done more than others. What we don't really have a great sense of, often in organisations in the midst of global financial crisis, COVID, acquisition, chasing growth, we don't really have a sense of whether we're getting a good return on investment from where we're spending money on people. Now, people capital planning sounds, to those of us that might think that people are the most important part of an organisation, they're particularly important, but in reality, it's of equal importance to other things. And the money we spend on people is a particularly important thing to measure and manage, because, as we all know, HR budgets don't get bigger unless you can really justify it. And a human resources plan, as I mentioned, should really sit beside, like a balanced scorecard, a finance plan, a sales plan, a marketing plan, and so on. And I guess my point is, if there's no plan, then in reality, your HR budget is your plan. And if you haven't really thought through your HR budget or reviewed it or mapped it out as diligently as a new product to market, then perhaps the plan and the planning process needs to be a little bit different. So just for additional context in terms of what is part of HR and what you need to be planning for, I guess it's just trying to provide a perspective in terms of strategic versus operational and process versus people. Typically, companies will dive straight to strategy and talk about culture, but as we know, there's lots of things that underpin that. So historically, back when everything started, we did the basics. We made sure that we did some workforce planning, as in what people do we need. We went and found them. We tried to pay them properly, and then without sounding overly dramatic, we tried not to kill them back in the industrial age, or tried to get them to come back, or make sure they got on the bus with all the other itinerant workers from Italy and Greece and come to work in the factory or the mine or whatever it was. And then in the 90s, we decided we probably should treat people a little bit better. So we created the concept of an employee champion. So we looked at performance management, reward and recognition. So we started to not just pay people award wages. We tried to look at how can we provide incentives, which might get them to sell more things. And, I remember back at KFC, the old complaint about McDonald's is, do you want fries with that? And when I was at KFC, the best way to get staff members to get more work was sell more fries. They go, I want more shifts. You go, great, sell more fries. They go, what do you mean? Well, we're going to make money somehow, so we need to break it down. As organisations started to evolve and we got through the 2000s, through the GFC and tried to look at how we evolve organisations a little bit better, we started looking at capability frameworks. Do we do succession planning? Who's going to be our next operations leader? And this is quite pertinent for the franchise sector, where typically organisations are lean and there's not a lot of room for succession planning. So you don't have a structure like a bank where you can work in accounts for 4 years and work into a bigger job in accounts, then go and work in another part of the business and then eventually be able to run a state or what have you. So this is, I think, is particularly important for franchising, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then finally, strategic planning, vision and values. It's all the sexy stuff when we put businesses together. We have all these strategic plans, vision, mission, all those sorts of things. But in reality, when you're standing in a retail outlet selling chicken or grooming dogs or whatever it is, there's a big distance between the vision and what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of that is people related. Naturally, larger organisations have the time and the resources to do this a little bit better. That's a lot to cover. So I've taken the time, and Damien and I had a bit of a chat to try and see how we can break this down a little bit more. So in reality, the most important part of an organisation really is around the workforce foundations. So how do we design the organisation? Where are we getting the talent from? And then how are we getting them into the business so that they can become successful? And from a technology perspective, bearing in mind we're not selling you technology, just giving you a sense of where it could make a difference to start, around sourcing talent is a great place to start. So, for example, if interviewing or trying to attract a whole lot of casuals, there are digital screening tools. There are video screening options. There's a whole bunch of ways you can make that more efficient than more traditional methods, and very cost effectively without having to buy an expensive HR platform. Once the workforce foundations are covered, then it really is about talent management. So what feedback are we providing people on the job? How are we bringing teams together from a group perspective? What are we doing from a learning and development perspective? I'll talk more about this as we go. The default position for organisations that don't plan HR like they do other things is to throw learning and development at staff. Now, I get in trouble sometimes when I say this, but not every employee deserves to be developed. It's a fact that in some jobs, it really is a waste of time. And in fact, they agree. So I've seen a large bank put in a really sophisticated learning and development platform, optional learning, and then say to all the staff, look how good we are. We've given you all these things you can do at home in the dark and on weekends when you're looking after your kids, going for a ride on your new jet ski. It's just not the right strategy or right approach. And so again, learning and development is important. If you're developing the wrong people, you're also sending a signal to the right people who aren't being developed. And that in and of itself, again, will impact on the culture. So all of these things, if they're not done properly and with a sense of partnership and employee engagement and the whole leadership team being across it, is actually diluting the impact that you're getting from an HR perspective. On the learning and development piece, just as an aside for the franchise sector, based on our observations over the past while, I think there's a big opportunity for the franchise sector in the learning and development space, which is to embrace people from outside the sector and teach them the things the sector's guaranteed to need, which is, for example, how to recruit franchisees, how to do franchisee sales. Once we've got those two areas covered, we then get into things like capability systems. So, do we have the luxury of developing 6 high-performing people in operations into bigger jobs in operations by moving them into marketing to get experience, by moving them into finance to get better experience, maybe move them from head office in Queensland to run part of Victoria, then take them back. And again, that's a luxury, if you like, for a larger organisation, but it can be something that needs to be considered for smaller, to medium-sized emerging organisations too. And then the talent pipeline, which gets back to the technology piece, if we go all the way back down to sourcing talent, I don't see a lot of talent pooling in the franchise sector. Now, we've got a vested interest, right? So I help recruit people. But when we were looking after 22,000 casual staff, we talent pooled using pen and paper and letters and envelopes and would send people a voucher to say, hey, thanks for applying, haven't got a job, stick with us, and they go and redeem the voucher, spend $20 more. And when we email them or send them a letter to say, do you want to work for us? They say, yeah, sure, I'll come and work for you. So again, that's using a technology approach to to get away from just-in-time HR activities and actually proactively make your organisation more capable. And then naturally at the top part of the food chain, there's culture and then there's strategy as well. But if all of the other parts aren't in place, aren't well thought out, aren't well understood, then going straight to culture is really not the best thing to do. We might pause there. That's a bit of a background, at least on how we see HR fitting together and helping your organisation. What we'd love to do, though, is get a sense from you, and Lisa's going to help us. She's going to give us some feedback once you put this into the chat. What we just want you to do is rate your own organisation on your workforce foundations out of 10. So you're going to put a number out of 10 into the chat feed. What's the knowledge like inside the organisation? What's your execution like? Do you have a plan for it? Do you have a sense of the return on investment? Or is it just something that happens when you're not busy doing sales and marketing, creating products and naturally, understandably, finding franchisees? So if you just put a number into the chat, and Lisa, you can just shout out some, don't necessarily have to name people.
Sure. I won't name.
Just some numbers.
We've got a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 so far.
Okay.
Still coming in.
Yep.
6 out of 10.
And as you're putting that in, maybe just
7.
if you want to also just put which part you think you might need to focus on a little bit more. Just again, you haven't planned this out, but just your gut feel, hey, we're not good at this, hey, we're not great at that.
Another 7.
6 and 7.
6s and 7s.
Okay, 6s and 7s. Anybody brave enough to put a 3?
Not yet.
There's no. I know this is a franchise sector thing, so there's probably not too many HR people in the meeting. So they'd have an 8 or a 9 there. So there's no 8 or 9s, no HR people.
So one of the feedbacks is opportunity lies in sourcing talent.
Right,
That's a
sourcing
6 out of
talent.
10.
Yep. I mean, it's annoying, right? Have to go find people, without a doubt.
Time consuming.
Okay, so adding to that, again, throw into the chat, we want to get a sense of how you're spending your money on people. So if you put wages aside for a minute, right, which is, I'm assuming, appropriate, you've got the right number of jobs and you're paying them properly, notwithstanding around the onboarding part, you may not be inducting them properly, you may not be paying them properly, and they may not understand that. Into the chat now, just want you to put what you think the percentage of your HR budget is that's spent on workforce foundations. So not labour, but everything else. So in this entire path, there's learning, there's rewards, there's expenses, there's induction programs, there's technology, there's spend on external recruiters, there's you've got consultants coming in to do leadership training. So what is the percentage you think of your overall HR budget, even if you know even if you don't know what it is, that you're spending at that foundation level? How are we going, Lisa?
10 to 20%.
Okay, 10%, 20%.
Got an answer to the first part of the question too. The first question we asked, developing team members to meet the needs of growing organisation, both to meet franchisee needs and to allow the owner to elevate out of day to day.
Yeah, I think that's a really good challenge for all businesses generally, particularly in franchising, though, with ironically a very hands-on involvement with the franchisee as they come in. We get all excited, and then occasionally slightly hands-off after that. And yet they've got all this staff, and your franchisees may not have actually led staff. And if they've become multi-unit franchisees, they've probably not led staff in multiple geographies and so on. So any other feedback there?
15%, but that includes team building activities.
Okay.
But part of that's employee engagement first.
Yeah.
He can see from the other side of the table, I think.
Any last comments before we move on?
That's it so far.
All right. I didn't expect you to know the answer. If you knew the answer and you knew it to the dollar because your business has already done that, that's fantastic. We're raising it more so just to give you a sense of the things you need to consider. What we might cover now is a process, if you like, for going through that to help you be really clear what it is you're spending your HR money on and how you're going about it. And again, this is all predicated on being prepared to spend money on technology. Because, we've all implemented software that we've thought would be highly efficient. I'm trying to align 3 calendars at the moment. I can't do that. I've quit. I'm going to stick it in the one piece of technology. So just in terms of people capital planning, again, this is not dissimilar to business planning, but we're doing this in the people space because it's appropriate to put these disciplines against people to elevate it to the same importance as sales and marketing and finance. So from an education and engagement perspective, we're doing a little bit of this now, but inside organisations, it doesn't hurt to have people better understand how HR works. Naturally, they'll be cautious to start because nobody really wants to talk. You go up to somebody and say, I want to talk to you about HR, that they think something's gone wrong. This is actually predicated on helping you do things right. A sense of an audit around making sure people are committed. How are we going at each of those steps? Where are we spending our money? And we'll talk about how you do that in a minute. And then do a plan. Now, the first plan won't be perfect, but the first plan will be a plan. If you don't do a plan, by definition, your plan is your HR budget. So if you take everything in the path and allocate all of your spend, that's your plan. But, you kind of get a feeling that you might want a slightly more sophisticated plan. And then having gone through all of this, you can see that, people in the organisation, even franchisees, will be slightly more collaborative about how all this works as well. So back to the education and engagement piece. So we're going to use onboarding as an example. So this is an idea, just a simplified version of what onboarding is about, what happens in the first 3 to 6 months, what the key focus might be, what the key KPIs are. And in getting to know Damien and hearing about him and his business, often what comes up when starting to talk to people about onboarding and induction and the potential to use technology is, people are finding themselves thinking, well, do I actually know this? Is it important? How important is it? Can I fix it? As opposed to necessarily just sitting there and waiting for it to unfold. So a useful process in order to determine whether that's of use or not is that conduct a little audit, if you like. And audit's a bit sounds a bit severe, a bit too serious. It's more initially a planning discussion, if you like. Because in reality, as we've talked about a couple of times, the HR strategy, if you don't have a plan, is dictated by things like kind of what you want the business to be like, the things that you spent the money on the most in the past and you just continue to spend the money, or simply it's always the way we did it. Often there's no return on investment calculation. And then if you don't have a plan, then, spending money on learning and development or culture is without necessarily the right workforce foundations is really spending, good money after bad. Just a couple of things to consider from a business impact perspective. Again, if you look at that path, there are all the activities. but you need to have need to determine which is going to have the biggest impact on your business. Which of them is a priority, and that could be determined by your need. And then, do we need expertise? Damien, what proportion of people do you think that come to you wanting to buy a technology would actually have nutted out this? How important is it? How much of a priority is it? Have I actually got the money? Can I buy the expertise?
This level, very few,
Mm.
very few. So what we see is people jumping, they see something somewhere and they say, I should get that. And I'm sure across this group and in the group that I chatted with at the convention, or at the conference, a lot of people talked about adopting software to solve problems and then only use 10% or 20% because they just have an immediate need. This thing does that. I'll just take it on. And the same goes in HR technology. People take it on to solve a particular problem. So onboarding, for example, this does that. Okay, that's great. But does it integrate with my payroll? Or maybe it doesn't. So then there's extra problems that come from that. So taking the time to actually go back through this and see what are the priorities. And oftentimes one of the key things here is the expertise. Do you have the expertise in your business to actually make the decision on what is good for the business? Sometimes just getting an external person, it doesn't have to be hiring a consultant and something expensive. Ring up 5 of your mates that are on this call and say, what do you do for this? Right? How do you solve this problem? Because there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Lots of people who've got the same sort of requirements or very similar requirements, particularly when it comes to fundamentals like onboarding and induction, where what you are teaching and what you are showing and what you want to learn, what you want your new employee to learn is different. But the fact that it needs to be managed and the fact that it needs to be checked and the fact that we need to set people up for success on the back of it is the same for everybody. So taking the time to actually invest the time really and maybe the resources to find out what is a priority, find out what you really need, and then go and get it from the right place the first time. Will save you a lot. Same as hiring people. You know, if you hire the wrong person, it costs you a lot. No different in this field. That's a really good point. And I guess the irony of it is vendors are people too, right? And so if you're going to a vendor and you're asking them to help you, they really want to help you, but they want to help you as best they can. They don't want to false start it, they don't want to false start either. So that makes a lot of sense. And you can just see now on the screen a bit of a summary of what Damien was talking about, which is it's important to have, these are simplified generalizations under the business impact commentary, but it's really important to actually know why it is we're entering into this change from a people space, why it is we're going into this people technology. So, using the induction onboarding example, it's about having clearer role expectations, making people more capable more quickly. And we've got a problem hypothetically with turnover in the first 6 months, which I've seen a lot in the past. I mean, if people join you and they leave within 6 months, it's nothing about them. It's all about you. Because when you found them, they were pretty cool, apparently. and now they're not. And so it's really important to understand which part of HR is going to provide the biggest impact in this point in time, not in 3 years' time, but in the next 12 months. Is it a priority? And the priority thing is related to, can we afford, are we going to spend the money? And not just money, also time.
Yes, no,
Particularly
great point.
For onboarding and induction. Often what we do, we're small businesses, we're time poor, we see a hole, we recruit, we do hopefully a good recruitment process to identify talent, and then we say, here's your company t-shirt, there's your seat, get into it. Yeah. And then we wonder why in 6 months' time they don't succeed.
Yeah.
And the reason is you can take a good person and put it in a bad environment, good things are not going to happen. You need a good person who's fit for the role, who understands the role, and then put them in a good environment and set them up for success. Not only do you not have to worry about hiring someone again in 6 months' time, you also have the benefit of having a valued contributor added to your team, which is what every team wants. You don't want to bring someone in who's a dud. You want someone who comes in who's a high performer. And if you're the person who's bringing those people in and spending that time with them initially to set them up for success, you are seen as a high performer as well. And people want to work with high performers.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Very good.
On the screen, you can see an example of a human resources investment dashboard, if you like. So it shows an example of an organisation that has gone through a similar process like this. A couple of observations. This looks like a typical organisation. So they think their culture is bad and it's going to have a massive impact They're spending a lot of money on learning and development, but they still think it's a problem, and they still need external expertise, but they're not really sure how to go about it. And so in reality, that's the big blue dot up on the top right-hand corner. And then sourcing talent, everybody thinks it's a priority and nobody wants to pay for it, which I get. As an HR director in the past, my job was to develop internal resources and processes and systems to let us fill easy to fill jobs ourselves and then get help for external roles. The challenge with franchising as a sector is they're all hard to fill at the moment. And so that can be a little bit of a challenge. Just quickly, to put that into context, and this is based on sort of a financial approach, if something is a business priority and you do need to acquire expertise, then you need to buy. So you either get better staff for that, develop your own staff, or you could go and actually pay somebody from the outside world to come in and do that, whether it's a contractor or so on. If you don't think you need the expertise, but it's still important, then you need to reinvest in your own internal capability. Because if you're not going to get help from somewhere else, and like they say, if you keep doing the same thing, you get the same result, right? So you will need to make a commitment to invest internally. If it's not important, but you still need help, you need to reduce your external investment. Because if it's not important, stop spending the money on something that's not important.
And make it available for something that is important, John.
That's right.
More important.
Absolutely.
You've only got a bucket so big, don't spend money in a quadrant that is not important to the business.
Yes, and this kind of seems obvious, right? But we don't apply this to people. We only apply this to stock investments, property, tangible things that we think are going to make us money. And then obviously, if it's not important and it doesn't matter, then don't do anything. And to Damien's point, where are you going to get the money from? So what is your decision for this? So we've just mapped through this process, some education around onboarding and induction. We've done a bit of an audit, and now we've got the final step in our people plan, which is the specific actions. To Damien's point, is we're going to review our technology providers, we're going to automate our induction process, and we're going to explore a team communication platform so that, well, cynically, if we mess up their induction, they can teach themselves. But hopefully they're actually going to tell each other how great a business this is and, hey, get your mate to come and work for us. And I'm looking forward to going to the team thing and how good is it that we got the reward. And God, geez, I love the user interface on the induction, whatever they're going to talk about. And then the investment commentary for this business is we're not going to do the leadership development program. They get paid enough to look after themselves for a bit, but we've got other things we need to do. We're going to review our staff turnover and impact on recruitment. And we're going to fund all this arguably in time from HR training, the 2 part-time admin assistants in finance who, whatever, it's a good reason to review headcount in part to be able to fund it. And then just in closing, to put this all into context, when should you be doing the people capital planning? So we've got a start of a year. If you're working at Australian financial year, whether it's people capital planning or whether it's finance or whatever, around January, February, March, you should be looking at it. Well, how have we gone in the past year? What is our internal capability? How's our culture going? What are we going to do about strategy? So that's where you do that piece. And it's a once a year thing because you can't change culture every 7 weeks because people get really confused. In fact, that's the worst culture signal, to change the culture every 7 weeks. Redesign the organisation. How are we going to develop the people that we've got? How are we going to reward them to make sure they continue to like it here? Where are we going to get people for the new financial year? What's that all going to cost us? Reward the people that are with you appropriately. And then in time, obviously manage their performance. And the best way to manage it is by talking to them more often rather than less, which in time, it takes a bit of effort. I'm not suggesting you have performance discussions 4 times a year. Twice a year is fine, because in reality, the first time it hurts everybody, right? Because you don't really want to be having it and they don't really want to have it happen because it's not gone well in the past. But the more often you do it, the better prepared they are to engage. And it's more like a confirmation of what we talked about as opposed to come and sit down. I've got all these pieces of paper I want to share with you. So
also, if no one's enjoying it, you're probably doing it wrong.
Yeah,
Talk about performance
that's
review,
really good.
right?
All of
So
it. That's
change
fine.
it, talk to your people and find out what's important to them. Make sure they know what's important to you and make it an enjoyable experience, not a painful one, and then you'll find it very valuable.
That's a really good point. And so I just thought we'd finish on that, just to put all of this into a context that might be useful from a, because it's like, where did we start? So my recommendation is, when reviewing how HR is going, start with the budget you've got, and then apply percentages to the buckets. Use our buckets if you like, and we've actually we'll provide you with a white paper which sort of spells this out if you're interested. Work out the budget, which will tell you what you're doing, then review what you're doing and get some external help if you want to have a chat, and let me know. And then do another plan, and then do another plan. It'll never be perfect, but it might be slightly less imperfect than not having a plan to start. So that's it.
Wow, well, that was very, very interesting. I'm sure we all found that interesting as well. People capital, the most important thing in your business. So let's open it up to some questions. You can either type them in the chat or take yourself off mute, say hello, and ask your question. If you need any answers, they're all here today.
Everyone loves talking about HR in front of other people.
Yeah.
That's right.
No judgment, there's no
That's
judgment.
right, we
No
can't-
judgment. You don't have to say who you are.
We can't provide advice on your manager. No.
Yeah, what about if you want to sack your kids? Is that tricky or?
Yeah, well, surprisingly, Bruce, I have shared this with my kids and they go okay.
In
they know
family-owned
exactly where I'm going to get them.
in family-owned businesses, when you've got your kids working in there, or your husband, Lisa, can you sack your husband?
Not if you want the money to come in.
No, it's interesting. The performance, like aligning your performance plans and your competency framework, and then the role of the person, and then bringing them in and getting feedback. I think regular feedback is obviously important, but how you capture that, and because it's great to give it at the time, but you will need to, if you're going to do reviews, bring it in later. So, Damien, is that something you recommend, that it's it's through software that you're doing all that to catch all that feedback at the time and then bring it back in at review time, or is it something it's the technology, it's better just to do it face to face?
I'd go a three-pronged approach, Bruce. First, face-to-face always wins. And if people are remote, do it on a video call or a telephone call, worst case scenario. So you have that initial response right at the time. And then note that down after that with the response. So not only the feedback, but also the response to the feedback. And then once you've noted that down, bring that back up again at the quarterly or half yearly. Use face-to-face for humans is best. But then putting it in technology, making sure you've got those notes taken. The classic line, HR is not about what happened, it's about what you can prove happened. So if you haven't written it down somewhere, it didn't happen. So always have it written down somewhere. And if you've got somewhere, you can have it organised and dated and timed and all that sort of stuff. So it's easy to recall when you want to bring it back up. That's the best way. And that's where technology can really help.
I think that's a really good point. And it's almost a case of not what you do, but the way that you do it in handling people. So, I would coach managers of all shapes and sizes and employees, to be honest, to not throw it into the technology as soon as they think there's something they need to talk about. Like, put it somewhere else. So I would just say to people, just make a note, have a note. These days it'd be a note in your phone. Back when all this started in my career, I'd just say to people, just have a manila folder, stick a piece of paper in there. When you think you got feedback for your team member, whack it in there, carry it around for a bit. If it's still aching, then it's important. And if you're a team member, it works both ways. Team members come to me and say, this is not going very well, blah, blah, blah. And as an HR director, I'd say, so you want me to go and tell your boss, the sales director, that they're hopeless? Yeah, okay, great. Not doing that. But why don't I help you reframe your problem and then see if you can come up with some of your own solutions, and then maybe you could, maybe talk to each other and work it out. The timeliness and consistency is really important. Of the process is really important, and the tech will definitely help with that, Bruce.
Can I ask
Any
a
other
follow-up
questions?
if no one's got a question?
Yep.
What about What's your view on the feedback sandwich, or the shit sandwich, as my staff call it, where you've got good bits of feedback and then that bad bit of feedback that you want to give, or constructive feedback? You know, how do you manage that from a technology point of view as well as a face-to-face point of view, gents?
Well, I think you named it. It's going to happen. So it's just, if you do it consistently and it doesn't hurt and it's for a good purpose, then it is what it is. You can't talk to people and not give them feedback. What's best, it's okay to say, hey, this is going all right. We need to work a bit better on these things. But again, it's on the basis that you already talked about it. Like, you're not waiting and going, here's your 3 bullet points on what's going well, and then I want to talk to you about this. Wish you had to use a different sort of sandwich, because I could have actually said I didn't used to like asparagus. I'm kind of used to it now, but I'm not sure about a sandwich.
I was going to say, you need to find a new cafe. Mine's a love sandwich. Thank you, Bruce.
So Bruce, I have a different approach to this. I think that the challenge is candor.
Yeah.
Where we, as business owners and leaders, are too not skilled enough in separating personal from output. We don't set the tone early enough in relationships when people come into your business to say, this is how we give feedback. Because if I hire John and the first week I say, John, I need you to put this report together for me. Here's how we do our reports. Here's an example of last month's report. Here's Mary, who did another report. And here's Stephen. They've both done these reports. You can talk to them. And when he gives me the report and I say, oh, that's shit, I'll go and fix it and I'll submit it to the client. The client is happy because they get the result they want. And as far as they know, they don't really care who did the report. And it might have John's name on the front. If that continues on and next time I can't do it, so I hand it to Helen and she fixes John's report, the client's still happy, right? So the output from the business is okay. But internally, John doesn't know that he's not doing the report right,
Yeah.
for one. And then Helen and I are lifting an extra weight for John. But if I had just said at the initial thing, hey, John, thanks for this. Per this report, the front cover's got to be like this and the table of contents has to be like this, or whatever it is. Can you please have another go at it and come back? If you do that the first time, you're in a really good position in future to raise any other issues. If you leave it for 10 times and then you come back after Helen's in your ear going, I'm leaving because I'm doing my job, I'm doing half of John's,
No.
that's a problem. And then you go to John and go, John, I'm going to have to let you go, mate, because you're not doing these reports right. He goes, what do you mean? I've done 10 of them. You never told me before. Right? It's a really difficult position. And actually, you think you're helping John, but you're not. Because in the end, he's not only unemployed, he's also very disappointed, right? Because he never got a chance to rectify that because I never had the courage to just be candid and say, look, it's not you, mate. It's just a report. It needs to be like this. And that, to me, I think, Bruce, would be the solution. The sandwich is terrible. If you've got an issue, raise the issue when the issue is there. If you've got good feedback, raise the good feedback when it's time. Don't try to make sandwiches. It's a lunch and learn, but sandwich.
And if you're having trouble trouble with parenting, HR Central have a new module, and the first video is the Marines explaining why and how they make the bed. So you can send that to your kids, Bruce.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good one. That's really
That was a great example.
Yeah, that was good.
Damien, excellent. Any other quick questions? Oh, something's come up. Kevin?
Subject to everyone
Hi,
else
Kevin.
thinking otherwise, I think it would be great if everyone on the call could receive this white paper.
Oh,
Send it to everybody.
Kevin from Centuro.
Does Kevin work for the union?
I believe so.
Yes, Kevin, no problem.
For a small fee, Kevin.
Yeah, we'll send it out. No issue.
Any other questions?
Really good.
No,
Nothing.
I'm pretty sure that you gentlemen both answered like everybody's questions in their minds anyway. So very informative. Have really enjoyed today, especially for me, people capital. I mean, you can't get better than that. That's the most important thing in all our businesses, including us as well. So moving on now, our next Lunch and Learn.
Yay.
We have on Wednesday, the 19th of June, we have a special Lunch and Learn presented by our Women in Franchising. So our hosts for that day is Geotech. And so hopefully, yeah, we'll get your invites very soon. If not, just flick me an email to say you want to come along. Someone's clapping. Yep. Yeah, so the next Lunch and Learn is the Wednesday the 19th, hosted by Geotech.
Not just for women.
Not just for women. All about challenges faced by franchisers post-COVID and in the current environment. So very, very informative. And our next Lunch and Learn scheduled is coming up on Wednesday, the 3rd of July. And this is hosted by Afterpay, which I'm pretty sure I saw Rory and Lucy on the screen earlier. So they are going to be talking to us about really important things like consumer behaviour, even next gen spend, Gen Z, millennials, like learning about what are their patterns, behaviours, how they buy, how we sell to them, etc. And so that will be on Wednesday, the 3rd of July. So hopefully we'll see everybody. Thank you so much for attending, and you will get the recording as well. And we will organise the white paper.
Definitely. Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh,
Bye.
good luck, that. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.